We tried really hard this year to focus on diversity. A lot of people talk about diversity in conferences. A lot of people talk about it on their blogs or their email newsletters. I recently wrote some stuff about it, trying to get the conversation going forward. And I got a little bit flamed, but I made a lot of new friends, actually. And some of them are on the panel. And I wanted to just have a discussion about moving forward. How do we make our industry more diverse? A lot of folks here are part of different organizations doing that. We gave about, I don't know, 20 different organizations, 5 or 10 tickets each. No. And somebody just came up to me in the lunchroom and said, Jason, why are there so many women here? And I just thought, that's a really, thank you to the women here. And I said, well, we always struggled with how to get women at the event and speakers and stuff like that. So we just started tweeting, does anybody know any female founders? And then we got 20 or 30. Then we asked them, do you know any? And then it spiraled, and that's why there's so many women here. So it can be done. But I'll let my good friend Vivek Wadwha take over, and good luck.
Good. You know, before I came to Silicon Valley about 3.5 years ago, I used to be a mild-mannered professor, believe it or not. It doesn't seem that way, but I was. And then I started writing for TechCrunch. And that takes some mild-manneredness out of you to start with. And I happened to go to TechCrunch's conference with my wife. And we were sitting on the front, and Mark Zuckerberg was sitting about 2 seats from us. So my wife, in the middle of the program, says, Vivek, do you notice something strange over here? I said, yeah, that's Mark Zuckerberg. Wow. I mean, she says, no, forget about Mark Zuckerberg. Look around. What do you see? And I said, a lot of different people, mostly young people. She says, look at their gender, mostly male. She says, look on the stage. How many women have you seen? Just 2 so far. Heather Hardy, the CEO of TechCrunch, and a circus performer. And that was a big shock to me, because before that, if any of you followed my work, I was writing about diversity in Silicon Valley. I called it the ultimate meritocracy. I documented that 52% of the startups in Silicon Valley were founded by people like me, people born abroad. I raved about how anyone, anywhere could come and make it in this fabulous land, and how it was a model for how the world should be. Until that TechCrunch event. And that was eye-opening for me. And I had researched entrepreneurship. I went back and analyzed my data. I got a number of other researchers to start looking at with me. And we were stunned at what we saw, that according to one data set we looked at, only 3% of the startups were founded by women in the tech and engineering sector. And then I started looking into why this was happening, what was happening. And the more I analyzed it, the more I was shocked at what I saw, that there's actually no difference between successful men and successful women. If you look at every data point, women tend to do better than men do. I started writing about it. And all hell broke loose with my first piece, which was titled, Silicon Valley, you and your venture capitalists have a gender problem. It was bad enough getting nasty emails from some of the people at TechCrunch. But what was worse was the private emails I was getting from my male friends. Venture capitalists, respected people who I look up to, saying, Vivek, if you want to make it in Silicon Valley, don't bring up such issues. Friendly advice. Another one says, hey, Vivek, what's your agenda? Are you trying to get laid? I mean, it's just horrible, horrible messages like that. And I said, something is seriously wrong over here, that this is, when you get attacked so vehemently, something, it tells you that you're hitting nerves. I started researching it more and writing more and more about it. And then I had Hispanics and blacks point out to me that, look, how many blacks did you see over there? At the TechCrunch event, there was one black guy on stage representing his CEO, but he was the token black on the stage. There were no other blacks there. And I don't even recall seeing a Hispanic at that entire event. My hat's off to Jason for this event. If you look around, it's pretty diverse. It's not perfect, but it's much better than you see anywhere else in Silicon Valley. The fact is that Silicon Valley is not a meritocracy. Yes, if you're an aggressive male, if you're an aggressive young male, it doesn't matter where you're from, you can make it big over here. But if you happen to be a black male, or if you happen to be a Hispanic woman, you're out of luck. That is the reality of Silicon Valley. We're going to discuss that here. I was kidding about diversity in our dog, but we have a very diverse audience over here. And I'm going to ask them to tell you their own stories. Adria, please go first.
Hey, everyone. Excuse me. My name is Adria Richards, and I'm a developer evangelist for SendGrid. So I live here in San Francisco. I go to a lot of hackathons, and so my perspective will be from the ground, talking with developers and talking with women and people of color who have shared their stories and thoughts and feelings and discoveries on the panel.
Danilo, my friend.
My name is Danilo Campos. Once upon a time, I built the Hipmunk app, and before that, I did, thank you. I did some indie iOS development. I was born to a 20-year-old with a GED in Puerto Rico, and I really have no business being in tech, and yet I got here anyway, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how that worked and how we can get more folks like me sitting in places like this.
And our token white woman. I'm just kidding. My friend, Fraeda. Fraeda, I respect you very highly, so don't take that badly.
Oh, no, 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 no. My name is Fraeda Kapor Klein. My first job in tech was at Lotus, the software company that did 1, 2, 3. And my job was to make Lotus the most progressive employer in the US. And that was 1984. And so we started with a lot of initiatives, a lot of diversity initiatives, lots of things we did through philanthropy, through our own human capital practices. We surveyed all the employees. Every employee had to rate their manager and all the way up to the direct report of the CEO on the day-to-day degree to which they lived the values of the company, including diversity. And managers' scores from their employees were what determined their bonuses. So that was 1984, so I have a lot of experience and history and perspective on what works and what doesn't work. And these days, about a decade ago, I started a nonprofit called the Level Playing Field Institute that does research. We've done a big study on hidden bias in IT work environments. We also run a summer program for low-income, underrepresented students of color, 4 campuses in California. They come all 3 summers of high school studying tech, science, math, to make them more competitive with their more privileged counterparts.
You know, in the tech world, and especially in academia, we're used to fancy words. No one understands except the people in their own domains. Adria has a word which fascinates me. It's called what is it, man-splashing? I mean, what in the world is that?
Yeah, Vivek, it's called mansplaining. And so for those of you who are in the startup world, you know that communication is really important. But we all know that there are people out there called know-it-alls. So they seem to have an opinion about every single subject. Mansplaining is specifically when a guy tells a woman something that she already knows. So.
Like what?
Well, so I was on the plane the other day coming back from Long Beach to San Francisco, and I'm sitting next to a wife and a husband, right? And the flight attendant is putting the luggage up top, right? And she's closing it. So the guy's like, push harder on the luggage, right? So I say to the wife, I'm like, he's mansplaining. She knows her job. And she's like, I know. So that is mansplaining.
Do you think that happens a lot in Silicon Valley?
It does. It actually just happened a little bit ago here. I was telling someone I'm going on at 2 instead of 1:30, and he's like, no, it's going to be later. I'm like, that's strange, because I'm the one going on stage. It is at 2. So it happens a lot. Yeah.
Very interesting. You know, when I was raving about Silicon Valley being a meritocracy, I used to get some very angry emails from people every now and then questioning that. And I thought it was just people who felt left out. And I couldn't understand why people were so upset when I called Silicon Valley a meritocracy. Danilo, why is that? I mean, you're not happy about it being called a meritocracy.
I think it's a lot more complicated than that. I think that when you've got people talking about Silicon Valley being a meritocracy, you've got a lot of people who are trying to maintain the status quo and insist that everything is just fine as it is and nothing needs to change. And that stance is, frankly, that shit is offensive, because what you're saying when you're saying that this industry is a meritocracy is that you're looking at having largely upper and middle class white males as the guys who are in authority, the guys who are in control, the guys who are starting things. And you're basically saying, all right, well, if you aren't that, then you don't have merit. And that's why you're not being represented here. So there's a lot more complexity as to why we have the mix of people that we have here. And it's important to understand that it's not just about how much you want it, how much you're energized to participate in this. Not everybody is starting from the same starting place. You've got people who are being born a lot closer to things like parents who have academic credentials, for example. People who are able to give the sort of guidance and be role models for what it's like to achieve academically. And credentialing is still a big deal. And so if you try to get work in this business, there are plenty of very large, very big startups that turned into large companies that are all about the credentials and less about what it is that the person has actually been able to accomplish in their life. And that's what pisses me off with meritocracy.
You know, Fraeda, one of the comments which I received when I wrote that first TechCrunch article, which still sticks in my mind, is that it was the fact that males are underrepresented in the ranks of strippers. Why should we care? So now, why should this audience care about diversity? Why does it matter?
Well, I think it matters for several reasons. It matters to me because of fundamental fairness. If we believe that we aspire to be a meritocracy, even if we haven't achieved it yet, then you have to make sure that every step along the way is fair and you look at
Why does it matter? Why do we care? Why does it matter if there are fewer women in the workforce?
Well, very specifically, you can look at it very selfishly, which is if the U.S. wants to maintain its current economic standard of living, it's got to figure out how to use all of the talent available to it.
Absolutely.
Half of the folks in this country are women. We are very soon going to be a majority-minority society. If we want to fill those jobs in tech, if we want to design products for the new majority, we'd better include the people who are the customers as designers.
Adria, what do we do about it? I mean, are there constructive ways of solving this problem?
Yeah, so well, to echo what Fraeda said, there are studies that show having women on your executive management team and upper management and engineers actually make for a better bottom line, right? So you're going to come out with a better product. So it's not just be doing it. So I'll share with you some of the initiatives I've seen people doing out in the field. One of them is the Ruby Mountain conference, Rocky Mountain Ruby Conference. Last year, a lot of conferences offer scholarships. That's great, but it doesn't solve the problem that still occurs if you're a woman or a person of color. You come to a conference and you look out there and everyone doesn't look like you. You feel alone. So they took the extra step and they said, if you get a scholarship, we'll actually pair you with an experienced Ruby developer to show you around the conference and introduce you to people. And so basically they're saying, we will help introduce you to this network. And that's really the biggest thing I've seen living out here for 3 years. I came from Minnesota. I've been in tech for 10 plus years, but that's what was different out here. Another program is called Rails Bridge, and it was started by 2 women, Ruby and Rails developers, because they wanted to see more diversity at conferences. The nice thing with Rails Bridge is you don't have to be only a woman to participate. They let guys participate. And the important thing about that is any startup you're going to work at, it's not going to be all one gender. If you're a woman, it's very unlikely. So you're going to need to work with guys. So you should be going to events that have guys. And it's not that guys don't want to help, but we have to give them opportunities for them to be allies.
Adria, I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you a question we didn't plan for. Have you been discriminated against?
Yeah.
I mean, how? I mean, how did it feel?
Well, I would say on the most basic level, it's often just making an assumption about my skill set. So, this would happen a lot a year ago, and now it's getting better. But how I'm dressed today, often then I'll be talking with someone at an event or a party, right? And they'll go, "Hey, are you in marketing?" Nope. Mm-hmm. Oh, are you in product? Nope. Are you a designer? Nope. I was even at the hackathon on Saturday, and I was going around and talking with teams, asking what they're building, and it was a woman, so it's not just men who do this. She's like, "Do you know what Stack Overflow is?" Yep, I do. So, so it's really about the assumptions, and that's what, I'm really excited to be on this panel to talk about, which is cognitive bias, things that we don't even consider that is going through our mind.
Yeah. I read somewhere you wrote you're really angry. You call yourself the angry Hispanic, I believe, in one of your blogs.
I describe myself as a self-loathing Puerto Rican.
Right.
Or it's more accurate to say that I'm a reformed self-loathing Puerto Rican because, from very, very young age, success was deeply important to me. And I don't know why. I don't know what really instilled that. But I knew that I wanted to be more than what I saw around me. And all the signals that I kept getting about my heritage were negative ones. I heard about, drug abuse, and I heard about, kind of squalid conditions. And, by the time I got to being, a teenager, I had lost kind of respect for my origins and felt very strongly that I had to just kind of carve off a chunk of myself and pretend it didn't exist. In order to be successful and to get ahead. And in the process of that, I developed biases against Hispanic people. And that's me, with a handful of positive Hispanic role models in my life. My mom, who's a very hardworking person. So, I had my own biases. And so I think it's really essential to understand that no matter who you are, there's going to be biases. And it's okay as long as you acknowledge those biases and work very, very hard to understand and overcome them. And most importantly, not subject other people to the consequences of your unthinking biases.
But I look at you, you're up here at the stage of this amazing conference. How does a guy like you, who was in such a bad situation, end up being a rock star on stage like this?
Well, that's the thing. I was not in a bad situation. I am extraordinarily privileged in that while my mom did not start out with a whole lot, she started out with enough initiative and drive to say, you know what, damn it, I'm going to take care of this kid. I'm going to make sure that he has a decent life. I'm going to do what I can within my limited means to take care of him. And so I had some stability in my life. I had access to a computer in the home by the time I was 10. And the thing that's interesting about this trajectory is that I spent more than 10,000 hours as a kid learning about my computer and getting to know it and really being passionate about it. But I had no idea that I could take that passion and actually translate it into a career because I didn't see any people up there who looked like me. So without that, somebody said it to me very succinctly. They said, if you don't see it, you don't know that you can be it. So part of my role now is that, for younger people who are trying to get into this, I need to make absolutely clear that you can do this. And for everyone who's not like me, but who wants to help foster a spirit of diversity, you have to understand that you need to elevate role models. And if you don't do that, you're not going to have young people joining the ranks of these STEM fields. It's as simple as that.
On the spot a little bit more. I mean, if a lot of the people in this room, and I'm saying this respectfully, received a resume from Danilo Campos, they would assume that he probably isn't the same as a Stanford graduate, Stanford dropout that they can hire. How did you achieve the success? How did you end up developing hipmunk stuff?
I don't have a computer science degree. And again, I have no business taking a role as like a lead mobile person. But what happened, and my message to folks who want to break into this is to say, you need to create a body of work that speaks for itself. The reason I was able to get into Hipmunk, they never asked for my resume. They went and they looked at my apps, they saw that I could do the job, and they hired me on that strength. So my message to young people who want to break in is you got to work your ass off and you got to make this stuff so that you can stand on your own and say, hey, look, regardless of my credentialing, regardless of my past, I can make this. Can you make it? No. All right, so hire me. And if you're trying to hire, let's pay attention more to results and less attention to pedigrees and all of this academic crap, because I have spent plenty of time with people with very nice degrees who didn't know jack shit about what they were doing. So it's got to be about more than where you went to school.
Fraeda, I tell my friends that you and Mitch are two of the greatest people I know, because even though you've achieved so much success, you're spending your life giving back. You've done extensive research on this topic. Tell me about the work you've done with the research shows, your studies on neuroscience, and so on. Give us a perspective here of how we can level the playing field.
I think there's an incredibly unifying message that's arising today from all of the new research in neuroscience. It stops what I see as the very vicious, nasty, and pointless debate about some people are bigots and some people are enlightened. What it does is it says, as human beings, our brains are wired to be biased. That's settled. We automatically associate two things. What we associate is what some neuroscientists call the thumbprint of our culture. So now the question is, what are we going to do about it? What separates us is those who, as Adria said, decide to work on our biases, and Danilo said this also. We either look at ourselves and our biases, or we choose not to. It's a matter of privilege to say, I'm objective, I'm bias-free, I'm rational, Silicon Valley's a meritocracy. To say Silicon Valley's a meritocracy when you are a majority person at the top is self-fulfilling prophecy.
Of course.
None of us make it on our own. None of us make it without access, without opportunity, without people showing us the way. And to ignore that is really to ignore what privileges we actually have. So I think there's an awful lot that's coming out now that we can utilize and say, look, the study we did, it was in startups and in larger tech companies. People who share a work environment, who might spend 60, 70, 80 hours a week in the same space, have vastly different experiences of that workplace, of being included, of being excluded, and those diverge by race and by gender. And so lots of people say, oh, no, if we had a diversity strategy, that would be unfair advantage. My point is, the situation right now is one of profound unfair advantage.
Yes.
And unless we take steps to mitigate it, we don't have a meritocracy, we don't have a level playing field.
Adria, you want to add something?
Yeah, to add on to what Fraeda said, with an example, so I volunteer and help out with a program called Girl Develop It. So they teach classes in the evenings or over the weekend, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, iOS, and the classes always sell out. You know, they're affordable, $10 to $100, but they have scholarships. So I was helping to TA, and this is a great thing for developers to do, men and women, volunteer, TA, help out, a couple weekends ago. And I thought there were just 1 or 2 women, but there were actually 6 women from non-engineering roles who had come from Google to take this weekend class. And they asked me to take a photo of them. You know, and I asked them why they were here, and they wanted to be better at their jobs. Plus, they wanted to see if maybe JavaScript was something that they wanted to pursue further into their roles. So really, this comes down to opportunity.
You know, we have about 5 minutes left. Even though I'm very critical about Silicon Valley, I'm also critical about US competitiveness. I still believe Silicon Valley is the greatest place on this earth to build a technology company. It is the most open, inclusive community in the world. And you know, the fact that I can be so critical and yet be so respected is amazing. Nowhere else could have gotten away with it. In other countries, they would have kicked me out of there, and I wouldn't have survived 2 days. But here, I'm welcomed. I'm accepted readily. So are all of you. Okay. Now, another thing is that I said I've been negative about Silicon Valley and women for the last 3 years. Actually, I've seen a dramatic shift happening in this ecosystem. I've seen women now mentoring each other, helping each other. The Women 2.0 event that I watched coming out of nowhere, 1,000 women basically now helping, mentoring. Amazing advances. The fact that we can have these discussions here on stage is an amazing advance. 3 years ago, it would be inconceivable to have a panel like this at an event like this. So I want you to conclude with your perspectives on Silicon Valley. And you know, where do you think, what do you think lies ahead, and why are you optimistic?
You know, everything good that has come to my career, so much of that has been fueled by what is possible here, uniquely. And that isn't an abstract thing, that's not a geographic thing, that's a people thing. So we've got some of the best and brightest and most decent people on the entire earth all around us right here. And I am heartened by the fact that, in speaking about this, people have reached out to me. They've been eager to pat me on the back and to reassure me that things will get better. And they've wanted to talk to me about how together we can make a better place. So the eagerness and the energy to improve, I think, is absolutely here. And it makes my heart swell to know that we have the best that we could ask for to make this a better place, and everyone's eager.
Adria?
So I share those opinions about the Valley as well. If you think about it, this is the place to come and take chances. This is the place to come and make mistakes. And with that being said, not just with technology, but how you think about things, right? There are so many people here who are helpful and very outgoing, and they're willing to reconsider how they've been doing things, because that's the nature of technology. It's the nature of efficiency. I can tell you, if you're watching this and you've thought about coming to the Bay, you should come. We're here. There are people to support you, and it's been really awesome. I'm really glad that I made the choice to come out here.
Fraeda?
Well, I concur, and I think everybody ought to jump in. But I think also being well-meaning isn't enough. Saying I'm a good person, I'm a smart person, doesn't substitute for doing your homework, for rolling up your sleeves, finding out about what other people's experiences and barriers are. So Women 2.0 got mentioned. We did 10 scholarships for women of color to attend Women 2.0 recently. And one of the founders of Women 2.0 contacted me and said, I'm getting a lot of pushback. Can you help me answer the question when people say having scholarships for women of color is discriminatory? And I said, are you effing kidding me? It's a conference for women where you have to get in only if you've got a women on your founding team, you have one or more women. That's not discriminatory, but you think making sure that women of color are well represented at that event is discriminatory? Really? So I think we want an environment where we can challenge each other, where we can say, wait a second, I assume your heart's in the right place, but you just stuck your foot in your mouth, speaking of other body parts, and let's talk about why what you said or did is exclusionary. Then we've got everybody at the table. Then we've given people permission to say, this is my experience, and it's as important as other people's experience.
I want to thank you, all of you, for doing this. I want to thank Jason for having us here. Jason?
Thanks. Oh, hey. Yeah, big round of applause. I think it's a very important discussion. So we take it very seriously. As the token white male left in Silicon Valley as a founder. I know it's like all Indian and Asian guys now, and I'm one of the few old white guys. But we really take it seriously here, and we actually have an email, diversity@launch.co, because the biggest challenge for us has been with judges. We actually had a really great success this year at getting a lot of women to the event and different races and having just a wonderful representation here and balance. By seeking out organizations. But where we still have a problem is judges. Because to be a judge, you have to have, 10 or 20 years of going through this and success. And it seems like the number of women in technology with that profile is very low, and they get invited to every single event. And so I'm like, please, Marissa, come to the event. Please, please. I'm busy. I have this going on. She couldn't make it this year. She'll probably come next year. How should I think about that as being somebody who wants to do the right thing? I feel like we've done the right thing in terms of giving scholarships and having diversity in the audience. I feel like having the panel is really a great thing to address it head on. But how should I do better with the judging? Should I lower the standard for judges? Or, or just have diversity? I don't mean to throw like a bomb at the end of the panel, but I do, because this is a debate that different genders and different races in our own company are having.
Jason, you're getting our panel wound up. I know they're hot buttons. You just hit that hot button. What should we do? Answer. Come on, everyone.
No, this is a debate internally amongst my whole team.
Well, so first of all, I find that the expression lowering standards, or we're only looking for qualified candidates, I find those to be offensive. well-meaning but offensive. Because as you've heard from this panel, I think what counts a lot is the distance traveled, not just getting to the finish line. Because we continue to reward people who start on third base and swing the bat and think they hit a home run. And that's as far as I can go with sports analogies. But I think, so I say to you, why do you need 20 years experience? Whatever you were doing 20 years ago is irrelevant to tech today. Why don't you get a team together? Why don't you take a cue from Adria's example of Railsbridge, or buddy up with people.
Yeah.
Do an old judge, somebody who's my age, with a,
Yeah, I guess the answer, and so the answer to that, we've had that exact conversation, is the people who are coming up to demo their companies frequently come to me and say, why is that person a judge? Because I have more experience than them, or they're not qualified to judge me because they're not as successful as I am. Like having Chamath as a judge, it's like, wow, look at the track record. Like you can't deny it, right? Marissa, you can't deny the track record. And just the startups themselves have come to me and said, I want to be judged by somebody who's got 3, 4, 5 times the amount of success I have.
Isn't the proof in the pudding, though? If the questions are the good questions, why does it really matter how many years stacked up to let those questions get answered? Yeah. Find people who can ask tough questions. Find people who can ask good, insightful questions, and let that be the bar for you.
And one of the things I'll say is, I see this happen with geeks of both genders and all races, is often the really good people, the really experienced people, they just want to keep working behind their computer. They don't want to come out to these events really because they see it as a detraction away from meeting their next sprint deadline, right? I'm even dealing with that within SendGrid, where I'm like, hey, it'd be great to have you go and speak about Chef. No, I don't want to do that because I'd rather.
Yeah.
So I'd ask the question, what is success? So maybe if you change your criteria, maybe you can't hire an engineering manager who has not successfully recruited and promoted a diverse group of engineers. What if that was a requirement? Who would you be looking at as sort of qualified or the best? Yeah. What if you can't be a judge unless you've been successful at building a really inclusive corporate culture? Mm-hmm. So it's really what we value. It's what we decide counts. And then we somehow come up with all these subjective criteria and we assign points to them and we add them up and we said, gosh, aren't we objective? No, you're not. So let's start from a new clean sheet of paper about what matters.
I think that's profoundly said and wise, and it's got me thinking, like, maybe we just have to change why we're selecting each of the judges. Clearly people want judges who have big bankrolls to invest in them, but there could be other reasons, and you've got me thinking, and for that I'm very thankful. This has been a great panel, and I hope we can really be a positive force at the Launch Festival. Again, we're here to support entrepreneurship and inspire it, and this was a very inspiring panel, so I'd like to just thank Vivek and the whole crew for one more time. This is great. Did everybody get to say what they're hopeful about? Did everybody answer your final question, or did?
Yeah.
Everybody answered your final question about?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good.
I think so.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, so let's